Okay, welcome everyone to our regular meeting of council. Before I call our meeting to order, I just will recognize and appreciate that we live, work, and play in the city of Port Alberni, which is situated on the unceded traditional territories of the Sishat and Hupachesit First Nations. We're happy to be here today, and I will just note that we do have 3 councillors joining us electronically. So we have Councillor Haggard, Councillor Douglas, and Councillor Dame all online. And for the 3 of our councillors online, wherever possible when you're voting, if you could have your cameras on and use your real hand, that would be helpful so that I can see the votes. If you're not able to turn your camera on, you are welcome to unmute and voice your vote or use the raise hand feature. But the raise hand feature does need to be promptly taken down before I call opposed. So a little bit trickier and definitely easier if you're just able to have your camera on for voting. And thanks for making the effort to join us online, I know, for a variety of reasons. So we will call our meeting to order. We do have an agenda in front of us. Are there any late items to add from members of council? Councillor Douglas.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a couple of items, and actually, if you're okay with it not being directly related to the meeting, we could just incorporate it into the question period. It's to do with outdoor burning and also to do with our trail system.
Sure, I think adding it, I don't know, question period is an opportunity for members of the public, so it might be better to just address under new business rather than adding it to question period. Donna, do you have any advice on that? Yeah.
Madam Mayor, that's where I would put it as well.
Thanks. Councillor Douglas, I will just add an item 6 under new business. And even if they're not formal items, you can speak to those items there if that works.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other items to add to the agenda? Seeing none, would somebody like to move approval of our agenda with the additional item? Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Patola. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Sorry, I forgot to go to the corporate officer, but I don't think we had any late items. Thank you. Sorry about that. Next on to adoption of minutes. We have the minutes from the special meeting held at noon and the regular meeting held at 2 p.m. on March 11th, 2024. Move to adopt by Councillor Solda, seconded by Councillor Mealy. Are there any comments or questions on the minutes? Seeing none, on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. We have no delegations today, so unfinished business. Item number 1, we have a report, Western Vancouver Island Industrial Heritage Society Railway Operations Update. And I think we're going to our CAO for this.
Thank you, and through the chair, I just did a brief update since our last meeting with some of the information that came from the Industrial Heritage Society on some of the ground that they've covered in the recent times. And I reached out to administration. Our Director of Parks, Rec and Culture happens to be on holidays, but is bringing a report to the next CAL meeting. So that is where the report refers, is recommended by administration to refer that, where we'll have a lot more information to give a full summary of everything that's going on and where all the agreements are, just all the little bits that we have to put in place. I know that there is some concern from the Industrial Heritage Society about the timing for the summer to get the crossings fixed to move forward with operational. But again, as administration, we like to make sure council has the full picture. So we would recommend this move to the committee of the whole. However, in the meantime, if council does give the direction, we can start working on RFPs or in the procurement documents. So as soon as we get the direction to move forward with either fixing the tracks or they're operational, that we can move forward immediately. So I believe everything else I tried to cover in the report, but if there's any questions, I can answer.
Thank you. And maybe just before I go to questions from council, I know you kind of covered it a little bit, but if we, anticipating we don't get this done prior, or all the information that we need prior to the completion of budget, could you speak to the process for us to be able to move forward in this year without making changes to the budget now if we don't have enough information?
Sure. The way the administration looked at this and from some of the discussion that happened at council, we're recommending it doesn't come from taxes. So if it came from non-tax sources, we could do a budget amendment at any time in the first quarter and take the funds and make a budget amendment at a later date. So therefore, the budget can still move forward with third reading today, and we can continue to work with IHS and make sure that we have all the information for council before expending funds.
Thank you, and I know that council's been mixed on this to date, so I don't want to presume that that's going to happen, but I just want everyone to know what the options are if we do choose to go that direction. Questions or comments? Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I appreciate it. Thank you very much for the report for staff. And we do have the IHS in attendance today too for any questions. I appreciate them coming. So if we go to the committee of the whole, then that means this wouldn't happen until we wouldn't make a final decision until the 22nd of April, I believe. I guess my question is to the IHS, if it's possible, is when do they need to start working on those crossings? When is kind of the last date we can do that to have a train operating this year? So I'm not sure if we would allow the IHS to answer that question, but that'd be my question.
If council's comfortable with allowing the IHS to come up. Seeing nodding heads, come on forward.
So I believe Mike sort of has an idea of sort of what is needed to be able to get the crossings done. I think we need to have an understanding if council would like to go this way with the operations this year, we need to have an understanding like very, very shortly. I think the 22nd is too long of a time for that to happen. Now, I know speaking with Mike, there's some possibility if we can get working on it ahead of time or sort of getting that RFP sort of stuff together to try to make sure that this is going to happen. The crossings is one of the concerns. The other concerns is we have a lot of volunteer time we're going to be putting in the next few months to try to make sure everything's ready to go. 100% doable, but we also have to be able to be prepared that we're going to be able to do that work and not rush our volunteers with sort of 1 month left. So it is all completely doable. The crossings are the biggest concern with that, but I believe Mike does have a very good understanding of what that looks like, and we're definitely happy to work with him to make sure that that can be happening in a timely manner.
Thank you, Richard. Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Appreciate that. So I guess it wouldn't hurt to go to the committee of the whole meeting for the entire picture, but to direct staff, if the motion goes, and we'll work on that, let other people talk, but to allow staff to work on RFPs ahead of time. If that's what I get, then it's a workable, then we can try. So.
Thank you. Councillor Solda.
Just a quick question, Madam Mayor. If the money is not going to come out of taxation and you have an idea where we could take it from, so maybe you could allude to that too, so the public would know. And also, where if it's not coming out of taxation, why could we not move forward? And would that hold us back through our third reading because we're going to put it in the budget or not put it in the budget?
Yeah, through the chair, any changes to the budget at this time will slow down the process of adopting the budget. However, an amendment made that is not based on the taxes won't change the taxation for this year. Some of the areas that we can use for it are listed in the report. I'll try and remember them all, but I believe it's the Growing Communities Fund is one possibility for some of the capital. The gas tax is another one that could be for our new allocation of the gas tax. Also, we may be able to use the forest reserve that I know that we have dipped into recently. But I believe those are the three main ones. Again, we're looking at it as the operational, as a one-time funding. It's not ongoing operating funding until we have the full picture with the grant with IHS working on that currently, that we'll have more information in the late fall for next year's budget to look at a longer-term agreement in the operations that IHS is conducting. So those are some of the possibilities where it could be funded from.
I just want to say to the IHS, I really like the report that was presented in our package. It was well done. I do have a couple of little questions, but I'm okay with what was presented. So I just wanted to say that, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Haggard, and then Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Not so much a question, but a comment. I'm really concerned about, they've come to the committee of the whole, it's been referred to council, back to committee of the whole, back to council, now to refer it back to committee of the whole. I feel like we're not giving them our firm support. So can we maybe decide today if we want to support them or not support them? And then, but still have those things solidified at the April 15th committee of the whole meeting that we need to further about their insurance and things like that. I just want them to know either we're going to be supporting or not supporting them. Their season's coming up very quickly. They'll have to get marketing in place and do those kinds of things, which they can do if they know they're going to have our support within a couple of weeks. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Patola, and then Councillor Douglas.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would be opposed to even putting this towards the Council of the Whole at this point in time. We're spending over $1 million on developing master plans for recreation and culture within the community. We've had a number of proposals come forward for items, we'll say marquee type items that fall into that category, and they've all been dealt with differently. The rail is being dealt with as if it's a foregone conclusion and we need to start issuing RFPs. Whereas the pier was referred off to, I don't think anywhere at this point in time because it's a community plan, but I don't see it's any different as a community plan than the IHS community plan is. It's still not a plan of the city. The skate park, which the city indicated its support for over a year ago, has been put off to let the community association or plans through the master plan until that's done. So again, that's been put off to the master planning process and reliant upon the community. Now, the community would like one, and skate parks tend to work for the benefit of young persons who, as we wait year upon year upon year, they get older and older and older. Similar with the ball fields. We acted on those quickly because it's a youth matter and youth need it now before they're not youth anymore. Finally, the issue of a campground has been put over to the master planning process. So I'm not sure why this committee, or sorry, this council, never sure which meeting we're having, is dealing with this as if, because there's some, I'm going to say artificial schedule, because it's certainly a schedule for operations for this year, I understand that, but whether it happens this year or next year, I don't see the difference in that. This is about proper planning. And so what's being asked for is $60,000 of, and I'm going to say tax dollars, because whether or not it comes out of a different fund, it means that different fund is no longer available to pay for the types of infrastructure that it's committed towards, which then results in increasing the tax dollars. So, and that's not the only matter, because of course there is a price tag to redoing the level crossings. And that is only dependent upon the business case for IHS being positive enough for them to carry on business. So it's not just a $60,000 one-time operating grant, which is somewhat unique that the city would give operating funds, in that usually what we support are capital fundings to projects that otherwise support their own operations. So again, it would be unique that way. But it's also the cost of the level crossings that may or may not ever be needed, dependent upon the grant and the business plan. Now, I understand the IHS has been working and works in a number of areas and has been continually working on promoting these opportunities within the valley. But having said that, I think that it is the wrong business plan for the IHS to start early without a business case. And it's the wrong plan for the business, for the city to spend tax dollars, effectively tax dollars, on the IHS starting early without a business case. So for all of those reasons, I think we are, again, putting the cart before the horse, or the caboose at the front of the train, if you will. But this is a premature activity or consideration on this issue. And while certainly there are the bones or the buds of what could possibly be a very beneficial project in the city, that's not there yet. And it won't be there until after the business case is prepared, for which they've just received funding for. I understand people want to get things done fast, but I like to see things done properly. And so if we're going to have a rail, I'd like to see the business case. I'd like to see it planned so that when it gets put in, it stays in and doesn't disappear again.
Thank you, Councillor Patola. Councillor Douglas.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I concur with the comments of Councillor Patola. As you know, I've been a big supporter of the pier, and I really understand the points he's making about the pier and the skateboard park and the campground being referred. I believe at least two of them were referred to our strategic planning session in June. To augment, though, I agree very strongly with the points and concerns expressed by Councillor Haggard. And my feeling is that the three projects that Councillor Patola referred to are significantly different from our industrial heritage group. The pier, for example, is really a fixed project. An unfinished project, but it's a fixed project. Likewise, the skateboard park and likewise the campground that will still need a lot of components added to it in terms of how to get them up and operational. The Heritage Society, the industrial society with the large core of volunteers, have been operating in our community for decades. They've had a period of time where they haven't been able to operate because of changes that occurred over the past couple of terms, but they still exist. They've been really working hard to get this up and going again. So I think there's a significant difference, and I if forced to make a decision, I believe what I would like to see is we go along the lines of what Councillor Haggard is suggesting, which is we've been sending them back and forth. Now we're about to send it back to the Committee of the Whole again. I would prefer, if we're able to reframe this motion and the amount of funding, if we can provide it. Perhaps just a simple question to Mr. Spencer is exactly how many dollars does the group need in order to come to what he called an understanding, and provide them with an amount if all council is agreeable to it, and provide it out of a source that is not going to affect an increase in our taxation, that possibly being the community fund or the gas tax fund, depending on which one is the most applicable. So that's the way I feel on the topic, and thanks for the time.
Thank you, Councillor Douglas. And just for clarity, a motion hasn't been made yet. So whenever somebody wishes to make a motion, they could read the suggested motion on our agenda, or certainly make up a different one. Councillor Douglas, or sorry, Councillor Dame, any comments? Just as everyone else has spoken.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. I think that at this point, I'm most in agreement with the statements made by Councillor Patola. I'm not entirely comfortable with the pace that this has moved at, and while I don't want to leave the IHS in a position of sort of having to wait in limbo, waiting for a decision, I do agree that I would prefer to see a more thorough process followed with this to make sure that this is truly a direction that is going to be beneficial for our community. So I would be interested to hear Councillor Douglas had proposed an alternate motion based on what Mr. Spencer might have to say about what the minimum funds required to take a next step would be. But I'm most comfortable, I think, sort of following a more thorough process like those that we've used with the other projects previously mentioned. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Dame. At this point, I think I will just leave it for whoever would like to read a motion. Councillor Mealy, and then, sorry, Councillor Mealy, or Councillor Douglas. Councillor Mealy just put his hand up first. So we could, Councillor Mealy, if Councillor Mealy wants to read a motion, and then certainly we can entertain amendments or a different motion if it goes that way.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll take a shot at it then. So I will move that the council refer the report entitled the Western Vancouver Island Industrial Heritage Society Railway Operations Update to the April 15th, 2024 Committee of the Whole meeting for further discussion, but allow staff to work with the IHS to go forward with the request for proposals for the work needed.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Douglas. Discussion on the motion? Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So just, I just say this as going back to where I was first speaking on this is to continue on to go to get the staff report, but allow our staff to move with the IHS to get the request for proposal work done at the same time.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Douglas and then Councillor Patola and Councillor Solda.
Thank you. I was just wondering if Mr. Spencer is there, if we could get a bit of a clarification on the amount of funding directly from the city that he does feel is needed at this point.
Councillor Douglas, are you referring to operating or for the crossings? Because I believe the number we have still that we're working with is 60,000 for operating. And I see nodding in the audience from Mr. Spencer, so that's great. And then the crossings, that would be a city budget, most likely. Mike, are you able to speak to that?
Sure. We've come up with a preliminary cost with IHS on the crossings. If we were to put out an RFP, we would have more exact costing as we would see what exactly is needed and the paving and et cetera. Again, that doesn't commit us to it, as we would have to be open in the RFP process that funds aren't committed at this time. But we could work with IHS on that if this motion did pass.
Thank you. And Richard, you're welcome to come up if you'd like to add any additional context. I know that at our last meeting when you spoke, there was comment around there being, a significant portion of that is insurance that we are trying to reduce. So I don't know if there's been any further information done on that, but you're welcome to come up and speak.
Yeah, so I think one of the things was that out of that 60,000 for operations, $40,000 was going towards insurance. No, we were referred to a insurance, I don't know quite what you call them, but they're basically a company that deals with the insurance for a lot of the heritage railroads in Canada specifically. So we got a hold of them, and they gave us that $40,000 quote, which was about what the city was paying in the past for the rail operations for insurance. Now, if there's possibilities of referring this to a future meeting, still allowing us to get an idea of, is this happening this year or not, then I'm sure we'll be okay with that, in the sense that there's a chance that that number, that 60,000 for operations, could be reduced if the city's MIABC insurance could cover or make that that cost lower. And in regards to the crossings, we did obtain the quotes for the paving and the actual work to be done from the crossings. From the actual companies that in mind would be doing the work. Now, I understand that the city has a different process. It was never really made clear whether this was an IHS managed project and the city would give us the funds to do that, or if the city would be doing this project on that, and them project managing this. It was never made clear to that, so, and I think it's still, there's still some uncertainty there on where that looks like going. But as long as, if council says, okay, yes, we do want to see the operations happening as proposed for the summer, then that those crossings are able to be done by that time, by the end of June. So, yeah, thanks.
Thank you very much. Okay, I've got Councillor Patola, Councillor Solda, and then Councillor Haggard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And since this report and recommended motions have been written in the manner they have, there hasn't really been a reference in here to the cost of the crossings that Mr. Spencer just spoke of. I'm wondering if the CAO or Mr. Spencer could give us a general estimate on how much we would be committing to do that if we were to continue with this motion. And also, part B, not a second question, is if the CAO could comment on the amount of staff time that has been involved in this so far and what our cost for that is. Thank you.
Thank you, CAO.
Thank you for the question, and I might have to get you to repeat the second part because I was looking up the first part, but on. Yeah, okay.
Crossing cost and staff time.
Okay. Well, currently, the crossing cost is on the attachment. It's called Dunbar Athol Crossing Replacement. And the MX3 crossing replacement, I believe that's a company that is dealing with rail, is $63,078.50, and then the materials are $41,782. Machine rental is $5,000. Athol Paving was the company that quoted it as at $9,195. Dunbar Paving at $5,271.80, and then a contingency of 15%. That brings the total to $142,976.47. And now, from my understanding, is these were got by IHS. However, sometimes there may be savings if the paving company's in town. There's other things that happen. The asphalt plant has been delayed by a couple weeks on opening. So when it does open, if we do have, we would have more exact numbers through an RFP or a quote system where we went out for competitive bids. I'm not sure about the railway crossings themselves, where I believe that falls under IHS's expertise. And I don't know if there's limited companies to do that type of work. But again, we would have to have further conversations on that if we were directed to develop an RFP. As far as staff time, there's a lot of staff time in working with IHS. We currently have three agreements. Two we're working on and one historic agreement. So they are all related in some respects, but again, it's more or less working on those agreements and getting more clarity on those. So there has been a considerable amount of the Director of Parks, Rec and Culture, and then also getting the new Manager of Culture up to speed. Myself, I've had to spend a few hours, but not a lot, mostly in the last couple weeks. And then also on our subsequent reports from direction previous that we're bringing forward to the coming up CAL meeting. It has taken some staff time as well. So I wouldn't say it's a lot of staff time, but we would be needing to figure out how much staff time moving forward, depending on what type of agreements we come up with Industrial Heritage Society.
Thank you, Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So the only comment that I have that comes out of that, and these are not precise numbers, but the cost of this is over 200,000, possibly nearing 250, which seems to be the general estimate of the amount of the tax savings that were achieved by not adding in the non-market change. So not that one necessarily is related to the other. I don't want to be conflate the situation, but for sake of argument of putting things in context, that's what we're looking at. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Solda.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. My concern is, again, well, my concern is, as Councilor Portola said, we're putting a horse before the cart type of thing. But what I'm also looking at is the budgets that was presented to us, the 5-year budget. And that was one of my questions, is that I noticed in 2004, grants City of Port Alberni 130, and then 2025 it's 130, and then it goes on to 120 for the following, and 110, 100,000. So this will be an ongoing funding, just so everybody's clear too. Not that I'm saying yes or no to the train at this moment. I'm still open to thoughts and ideas here, but would it be better to wait for the committee of the whole before we start the whole project and put money, and then suddenly we all come back and say, we're not moving forward, and we've already started the process? So that's where I'm at.
Thank you. CAO.
Thank you, and thank you for the question there. I believe you were referring to the first IHS report that was brought forward on their 5-year plan. At that time, council had a discussion and asked IHS to come back with a new plan to operate the speeder on a short track down by the train station and along the Harbor Road in that area. So IHS went ahead, and then when we received the material, it just happened to be before the last cow, which then I was asked to bring forward the information that I had received to a coming council meeting, and that's why I did the report up to do a cover report for the information coming forward. So with that, it was at a council request that IHS went back and looked at a different operating model and what that cost would be for a 1-year term until we can understand how we move forward in the ongoing operating costs.
Thank you. Councillor Haggard.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. One of the options is on option number 4, direct administration to wait until the ICE-T grant report is complete before taking any action and seek operational plans for the 2025 year. I'm not sure if we got it confirmed. Did they receive, IHS receive the grant from ICE-T? And if they did, how much was it? And what is it going to be used for? Thank you.
Thanks. We're going to ask Richard to answer that question.
Yes, so the Alberni Pacific Railway Action Group, which is what we're calling the group of stakeholders that are involved in this project, we did receive the grant from ICE-T, so we now have a total of $50,000. And we have released an RFP within the last week for the search for someone, for the contractor to come in and do that work to get the plan. So we're hoping to be able to have that plan ready by the end of 2024. Assuming all goes well with finding the person to come in and do it. So yes, we were successful in receiving that money, and we've already taken our first steps to proceed forward with that.
Thank you. Councillor Haggard, did you have a follow-up question?
No, sorry, I couldn't get my hand to lower. I'm good, thank you. Thank
you. Okay, Council, I think we've had a lot of discussion on this this meeting and prior, and I just wanted to recognize, first of all, in my comments, Councillor Portola's comments around our varying treatment of different issues, referring some to capital plans and master plans, and some to strategic planning, and some proceeding forward with. And I think that that's an excellent point that requires a lot of consideration. One of the challenges of not having a master plan in place is the question, and our official community plan as well, in some capacity, as that will speak to the general direction that we intend to go as well. One of the challenges is do we pause on everything until we have that, or do we make the best decisions we can in lieu of having it or not having it, and try to not hold everything up while we get there? And I do recognize that I think we have been inconsistent in applying that. So I think that's important to note. I guess I wanted to speak to why I consider this to be slightly different, and not, I think, again, it's just making the best of a situation and figuring out, how makes most sense to move forward, while noting that I do think we should probably just be saying no to everything until we have those plans in place, but that's not always the most realistic or practical. So I see this issue as slightly different because I think this is a prior service that operated for a long time, that council a few years ago, in one of my early years as mayor, basically put an end to because we weren't able to get a budget and a plan in place that made sense. Since then, there's been a multi-year effort working with IHS to bring a plan to fruition. And every year since then, we've put, or several years since then, we've put the crossing repair into the budget, and then a couple of times we've taken it out at a final stage because we didn't have the operational work in place. And I think that, so I see this as different because we've been kind of ongoing on this issue for quite some time. And I think that what I see as very different in this year and this iteration of the attempt to bring it to fruition is a group that is very much willing to work with us to bring back all of the information that we have requested and bring it back in a very quick way. And also that when we asked for a community-focused, kind of smaller scale operation, that plan was brought to us. So we've always, with the train, had really big, grandiose ideas about what we can do and how many, tens of thousands of tourists we're going to bring into our community. And while I think those have been fantastic hopes and dreams, they weren't necessarily realistic for the budgets that we had in place or for the experience that we were able to offer, again, with the budget that we had. I believe really strongly in this iteration that has been put into place because I think it is community focused, because it's smaller, because it's really looking at things like the Santa train that, we know that the Santa train every single time it runs is going to be packed full and loved by our community. So I see this really as an extension of our Parks and Rec offering because this is, like we would put on other services and programs and events like the other ones we've been talking about during our event discussions. I see this as an event opportunity where we're leveraging a third-party nonprofit in the community. So while I do recognize the comments and concerns from council about varying in how we are treating some of these requests, I also want to really appreciate that it is difficult to make decisions when we don't have all of the information in front of us. But I think that we are very close, and the work that has been done is significantly further along than I thought we would be at this point. So for that reason, I'm going to support the motion and hope to support this initiative for this year and see the train come back. But again, I just want to really give respect to the fact that this is not the process I think any of us would like to see us going through, and it's really how do we make the best of a decision? We have to make a decision of some sort, and how do we do our best at that given where we're at today? So that's my kind of line of thinking, and I think that really important piece for me is that this is not a new service that we're asking council to consider. This is something that we've been working on, multiple councils and multiple staff and IHS representatives over a few years to try to get back. Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I always defer to your memory of the facts because it's always correct. So, but it's an interesting differentiation that you have made. It seems to me that there was a campground in Dry Creek Park for a number of years that was successful. So that was certainly a prior issue or prior program of the city, probably even older than the steam train or McLean Mill was. There is existing a skate park that was supposed to be maintained through our budget that we have provided to parks to maintain it, and it hasn't been done. So there is an ongoing yearly commitment that has existed since the beginning of the skate park, which is before my time, but certainly is there and is constant. For Councillor Douglas's benefit, I recognize that the Pier project is a project that was started some probably 12 years ago and proceeded a long way before it got put onto the back burner, but it has remained there, at least in the eyes of the community. So the differentiation you make, while I understand that there will always be different points of view on each individual project, I see that differentiation to be equally applicable to all of the other projects and probably many more that, such as ball fields. We can always talk about ball fields. So that's just my comment. And I just think that really what this ends up saying, and it's unfortunate because I would rather be in the the prime position of having information and making wise choices. But at this point, we're essentially rewarding the group that has made the most noise, been a squeaky wheel, and other groups that have been more cognizant or just attempts to work within the process more directly are being less rewarded. Either way, the community is going to benefit, and we're going to spend tax dollars on it to make the community benefit. So there you go.
Thank you, Councillor Patola. Councillor Mealy, and then unless anyone has anything new to add, I think we'll probably call the question and vote.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I do appreciate that. And I do hear all the comments from my colleagues, and I appreciate everything that's been said so far. I just want to say I do note that the Industrial Heritage Society is agreeing with staff, providing a 1-year operating agreement for now, and then working with staff and council for a longer 5-year agreement. I'd also like to bring forward that we've decided to put a train at the train station where we're going to fence it off so councillors hold they can't run all over it. So, but we can't do that with without getting the rail fixed to that point, or else we're going to have to move it some other way. So that is also something which I believe we'll see some cost savings with if the rail is fixed in those 2 crossings. So just wanted to throw that out there. But again, and also again, I'd like to just say I don't think it's, and with respect to Councilor Patola, I don't think it's the group that makes the most noise. I think it's the group that's done the most work in such a short period of time. And I wouldn't support this if I didn't see the group doing so much work, and it's been noted at council and staff as well that they've done an immense amount of work so far, and those are our assets. Those are the city's assets. So to see them up and running for the enjoyment of the community, I say this with respect, we took $1.2 million out of the growing community funds for the key to key. I think if we can pull 140,000 plus out, it's a small investment in the overall picture. And I'd really like to see that. And that's why I'm supporting it, Madam Mayor, is the group has come forward. There's young blood on the group as well, which a lot of communities or a lot of groups within the community has had a hard time finding and moving forward. So I just want to give it a shot. And if they also agree for a 1-year operating agreement, we can look at it again next year. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. Simple as that. So, but I'd like to give it a chance.
Okay, thank you everyone for all of the comments on this. Is everyone clear on the motion as it is slightly different than what has been written on the agenda? Would anyone on council like it repeated? Okay, would you mind repeating it?
I would love to, Madam Mayor. So it is the majority of the motion is the one that is written on the agenda that council refer the report entitled Western Vancouver Island Industrial Heritage Society Railway Operations Update to the April 15th, 2024 Committee of the Whole meeting for further discussion. And then the addition is, but allow staff to work with the IHS to go forward with the RFPs for work needed. Request for proposals.
Thank you. So with that, I will call the question. All in favor? Okay, and any opposed? Thank you. Motion passes, and thanks everyone for all of the discussion. Okay, so we will move on to our second item under unfinished business, 2024 to 2028 financial plan, recommendations from the March 18th Committee of the Whole.
Yeah, Madam Mayor. So at the Committee of the Whole meeting, we had a resolution that was passed by the committee for recommendation to set the tax rates for major and light industry with the separation of 20 cents per thousand, as we have been trying to over the past few years in that general range, because we did delink it in 2021. With that information will come forward with the tax rate bylaw and provide some information so that council understands the delinking a little bit more and some of the history I'll bring forward, and just some of the history also on major industry. But with this resolution, the financial plan is set on the final page as far as the impact to the residential single-family home at 9.16%. And with that, the tax rates would reflect that. But knowing that there is a revised roll that will be coming forward at the end of the month that will set that final tax rate. So it could change slightly from that value. So with that, it's over to council to have any questions.
Thank you very much. Councillor Mealy, would you like to read the motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that council continue to delink major industry class 4 and light industry class 5 and set an effective tax rate for light industry that is approximately $20 per thousand lower than major industry to rebalance the tax share and lower the effective tax rate of class 1.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Solda. Any comments or questions? Seeing none on the motion. Oh, sorry, Councillor Douglas.
Thank you. I just wanted to have this up for discussion a little bit because I've found it to be a difficult to understand concept. And so there must be somebody out there in the community who's has had a challenge as well. I hope, anyway, I hope I'm not the only one. I was just wondering, I had one question. So we have our heavy industry, from what I understand, which isn't mentioned in this motion. So I was just wondering if we could have explained, will this impact the amount of tax paid by heavy industry, or are we leaving them at the same rate they were at prior? If a simple question like that would work.
Madam Mayor, through to Councillor Douglas. So what we have is the tax share per class, and that will remain the same for major industry based on what we've done in the past. There has been no non-market change for major industry, and no real change in that classification. So it will not have an impact on major industry at all. And what I will do, Councillor Douglas, is make sure that when we bring forward the tax rate bylaw, it provides some of that history and some of the allocations to major and light industry over the past few years. And historically, going back to probably the mid-2000s, we have some good information that shows how major industry did have quite a large share of the tax base. But as we've seen changes to major industry, that has come down over the past 20, 25 years.
Thank you very much. Councillor Douglas.
And thank you for that. And so just as a follow-up, two questions I'd like to ask. One is just to make it perfectly clear then, from what I understand, there will be no tax increase for major industry in this new budget? That's the first question.
Andrew.
Madam Mayor, through to Councillor Douglas. So the tax rate will actually increase based on the increase that we see for the overall taxation, which was set at 11.63%. That class will see that increase in that in 2024. So the tax rate will go up, but there's no increase in share, and no additional non-market change in that class. So it's going up by that percentage that the financial plan would have been going up before we did the allocation of non-market change to light industry and commercial class.
Thank you. And Councillor Douglas, I'm sure there are other people with questions on this, so you're certainly not the only one. It is a very confusing topic and piece of the budget. Continue on, Councillor Douglas.
Thank you. Yeah, so again, I just want to clarify it. So from what I understand, the current state of our budget, residential increase is pegged at roughly 9.1%. And from what I understand from the last answer, heavy industry or major industry increase will be 11.5%. Was that correct, roughly?
Madam Mayor, so it's 11.63. That was the rate that was set before we did the allocation of non-market change. That said, with the revised rule that is finalized, it will have, and it may have an impact on those rates. So I just caution relying on those until we get that final revised rule.
Go ahead, Councillor Douglas.
And yeah, thank you for that. And I don't want to be specific about the point. I just wanted to make sure I had the concept there and the understanding correct. And the last thing I wanted to ask, and this isn't directly budget related, but just whether we can refer this to a future, perhaps our strategic meeting about, because I don't believe we have an incentive based on our heavy industry as far as creating a tax incentive for occupying our waterfront areas. And if I'm wrong in that, I'd appreciate being corrected. Otherwise, I'd like to see this referred to a strategic planning meeting, which would of course involve creating an alternative industrial site somewhere else in the community for major industry as we develop over the next century. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Douglas. We do not have an industrial tax revitalization incentive along the waterfront, or I don't believe anywhere in the community currently. And I think that would be a great discussion for strategic planning as well as an industrial zone. A lot of work has been done on that over the last few years. There's no easy option or answer, but there's some reports we could draw on for initial discussion and certainly a long-term conversation we could be having about where we'd like industry to be existing. Okay, any other comments? Okay, then on the motion, as written on the agenda, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried, none opposed. Okay. Moving on to staff reports, item number 1, accounts. Councillor Solda.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the certification of the Director of Finance dated March 25th, 2024 be received and checks numbered 154532 to 154621 inclusive in payment of accounts totaling $1,624,570.74 be approved.
Thank you, Councillor Solda. Moved by Councillor Solda, seconded by Councillor Patola. Seeing no comments or questions on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you. And on to bylaws. Item number 1, we have development cost charge bylaw, and this is just a final adoption. Councillor Mealy, would you like to read it?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that Development Cost Charges Reserve Fund Establishment Bylaw number 5102, 2024 be now finally adopted, signed by the Mayor and Corporate Officer and numbered 5102.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Solda. Any comments? Seeing none. On the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And item number 2, we have zoning bylaw amendment for 3045, 3053, and 3063 Kingsway Avenue. And this is another final adoption. Councillor Mealy, would you like to read it?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Move that zoning amendment 3045, 3053, 3063 Kingsway Avenue, bylaw number 5096 be now finally adopted, signed by the Mayor and Corporate Officer numbered 5096.
Thank you. Is there a seconder? Seconded by Councillor Solda. Any comments? Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I wonder if any of the planners are available to answer a question that I will place through you. This goes back to the requirement for a public hearing, and this is proceeded without one on the basis that we're not permitted to have one because it is a bylaw zoning amendment that is consistent with the OCP. That was, I was told in a previous meeting that was the position of the department and the administration in the department, which is fine. That's what I've been told. But tonight, we are having a public hearing on a zoning amendment that moves in the exact same manner zoning of one lot from C7 to R2, just as this zoning bylaw amendment does. The one that we are having a hearing on this evening is a lower height, a lower density, less lot coverage, and the second time the issue has been broached since it's right next door to another one that we already permitted. So overall, we're having a public hearing on a zoning bylaw amendment that is much less divergent or inconsistent, if you will, with the OCP. And yet the official, which again is based on the official recommendation of the department. So the department has made 2 recommendations, both that are completely opposite to each other on facts that are relatively the same, although much less egregious in the one where we're required to have the public hearing. I'm just wondering if there's an explanation for that.
Sure, I'll go to our Director of Development Services.
So most certainly, and the fundamental difference, and not into the details of the project, but this project, the OCP designation for these lands is multifamily residential. The project that is proposed that we're hosting a public hearing tonight for is again a multifamily project, but the OCP designation on the lands was commercial. So it's being asked in the OCP, it's shown as a land designation of commercial and is going to multifamily. The one that is before council tonight is again a high-density multifamily project, but in the official community plan, the land designation for these lands was multifamily residential. That's the core difference between the two.
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Patola.
So am I incorrect in, when I read the report that says the address, and I'll just go with the Civic, 3063 Kingsway is zoned C7, not R2?
It's zoned C7, but in the official community plan, the designation on the lands was multifamily residential. So that's why it is consistent with the OCP. Even though the zoning on one of the properties was commercial, the designation in the official community plan was for all three for multifamily.
Thank you. Councillor Solda.
I'm not sure if I can ask this question because I'm not sure. So the question I want to ask is, there was a lot of concerns about parking, and I believe this particular build is going to have underground parking because is it, or how does the parking work for that area?
There's both under the building parking and some additional parking off the laneway in the rear of the property.
And that's what I thought. I just wasn't sure if the person who had written the letter knew that. So thank you.
Thank you. Not seeing any final or additional comments on the motion. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thanks, everyone. And we'll move on to item number 3, 2024 to 2028 financial plan, third reading.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So today we have the third reading for council to consider. The question and answer has been updated with a few questions from Councillor Patola at the last meeting, confirming the actual amounts more closely in the discussion. I hope that reflects the intent of Councillor Patola's questions included in the Q&A update. With that, we've made some changes. Currently sits at 9.16% for the financial plan increase on the average single-family residential home, and you know, this financial plan is now set to be adopted if given third reading today at our next regular council meeting. At that time, the tax rate bylaw would come forward with a revised role that would provide the tax rates essentially for the community, and then we'll have that final amount firmed up. So if there's any changes that council would like to make today, we could still do that, but we'd likely call special meetings to adopt the financial plan in a timely fashion to set everything before the May 15th deadline. So it does take some time, but currently the schedule, if council does endorse the recommendation, we see that next opportunity to adopt on April, in the first meeting in April.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Councillor Solda and then Councillor Patola.
All right. So my question is, I know when we started the whole process, we talked about the fixed costs, which was 12 point something percent, 12.7%. So what happened to those fixed costs? How did we lower it and what happened? Because we still have fixed costs. So where did it go? Is it because we took some things out of the budget? So maybe we could explain that, because don't I look like I have egg on my face when I say we have 12 point something percent fixed costs?
Andrew.
Madam Mayor, everything in isolation, if we separate out, it adds up to a certain amount, which could be that 12 point whatever percent it was. But we did use reserves to lower the tax impact that we also had in that 12% factor. And I think if you recall, it was one of the largest components of the increase year over year for the capital. So now that's being used with reserves. So that's one factor. We also saw the revenue for ticketing and fines go up by approximately 0.5%. So through the budget process, through amendments that are made, those things adjust over time. But what we could do is bring back an updated component in the next staff report that will help make that more clear on how that adjusted from the point in time that we had brought that information forward to now at adoption.
Thanks, great question. Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is not really about the financial plan, but in reading the financial plan, this information came up, so my comments are now under this report. I see at page 109, which is the Land Sale Reserve Fund. Under that, receipts, the last item is stated as transfer from off-street parking reserve. And if I recall a conversation that we had a few meetings ago, I'm not sure how many now, about reserve funds, I believe an answer to a question was that we don't need to have an off-street reserve parking reserve fund because we don't do that. But apparently, for some reason, it's referred to here. So I'm just confused because I understood we don't do that, we don't need the reserve fund, but somehow the reserve fund that we never created is referred to in these documents.
Thank you. Andrew.
Madam Mayor, so that is a different off-street reserve fund, and I think we reviewed that at a prior meeting. So that goes back to historical service that was started in, I think, 1970 for some parcels in the downtown core that provided parking lots for the businesses, and they continue to this day and have an operations plan for those parking lots. That is funded through a specific tax for those properties still. So there would have been debt. So this is a historical document, and that would have been a transfer from reserves. And if you can see on that same page, there's a transfer from RCMP surplus, which was not a reserve at the time, but now is. There's also the IRF transfer. I think there's been IRF transfers to other funds at different times, because council has the ability to make those transfers by resolution at their discretion. And even though a bylaw might be set up or a fund might be set up, they still have the ability to make that decision and have that transfer. So I believe that's a historical transfer that has not happened in the past 4 years that I've been here, but is a historical reference to a transfer from the historic off-street parking reserve that was set up to provide the borrowing at the time for the purchase of that land and development of that land, but is no longer, there's no longer a reserve that's associated with that service, and it's just purely a operational tax that is on those downtown commercial properties that are in the service, and it's approximately $18,000 per year right now.
Thank you. Any additional questions on the budget? Okay, not seeing any questions. Then Councillor Mealy, would you like to read?
Absolutely, Madam Mayor. I move that the City of Port Alberni 2024-2028 Financial Plan Bylaw number 5097-2024 be read a third time as amended.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Patola. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? I think that was all in favor. Any opposed? None opposed. Thank you. Thank you for that, Andrew. We'll move on to correspondence. Correspondence for action. Item number 1, a letter received March 13th, 2024 from the Port Alberni Port Authority requesting the use of the parking area at Harbour Quay. Councillor Mealy?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move that the council authorize the Port Alberni Port Authority use of the parking area at Harbour Quay for the purpose of a community event on Saturday, June 22nd, 2024, from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. on the Centennial Pier, subject to the notification of emergency services and BC Transit, consultation with all affected businesses and residents, implementation of a traffic plan, provision of standard liability insurance in the amount of $5 million minimum.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Solda. Any comments? Councillor Douglas.
Sorry, that was the second hand going up there. No comment.
Okay, no comments. Wonderful. Okay, seeing no comments then on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And item number 2, we have a letter dated March 8th, 2024 from the ACRD requesting council support for an application to UBCM Emergency Preparedness Fund. Councillor Mealy.
Let's keep rolling, Madam Mayor. Move that the Council for the City of Port Alberni agrees to provide approval for the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District to apply for the Union of British Columbia Municipalities Community Emergency Preparedness Fund for Public Notification and Evacuation Route Planning Program, and authorizes the ACRD to apply for, receive, and manage grant funding on behalf of the City of Port Alberni.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Patola. Any comments? Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you. No proclamations and correspondence for information. I will go to our corporate officer.
Through the mayor, just 4 pieces of correspondence today. First is the District of Hudson's Hope. Letter is a support for Bill 34. A copy of the City of Port Alberni letter to the Ministry of Forests in support for the Port Alberni mill dated March 15th, 2024. And from the City of Duncan, the 2024 AVICC resolution failed to appear charges in policing statistics. And lastly, a letter from Bill Kangizer regarding the Johnson Road utility improvements.
Thank you very much. Any comments or items councillors would like to speak to? Councillor Douglas and then Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It was just regarding Mr. Kangizer's note. I just recall in the past, I believe he made a reference to the utility poles, the telephone poles down at the eastern end at the bottom of Johnson Road. And I know MOT was in our neighborhood and mentioned, you know, future work there, which is what he was writing about. And I seem to recall that all the poles in our community are owned, I believe, by Hydro, and then leased the space is leased from the city. I'm just wondering if Hydro and TELUS have been given a heads up about this potential work, and if not, perhaps our CAO could reflect on that and see if we can just make sure they are aware, so that possibly if they did want to do the work of putting all those services underground, we could have the thrill of seeing one bureaucracy work with another and maybe get it done at the same time. Thanks.
Thank you. CAO.
Thanks for the question. Currently, I don't think we've talked about that particular project because I don't believe there is a project in the queue with MOTI. They've looked at some possibilities in the area. They're looking at possibly doing some improvements in the short term. But in the longer term, it'll come down to design criteria in that area. I know we're going to be doing some public engagement when we're talking about the transportation master plan in the Lower Johnson area, but also the affected streets on the sides, which then may turn into a project. And we're hoping that Hydro, TELUS, anybody that hangs anything on the poles in town will be at the engagements as well. I know that we've made it very clear as administration, anytime we can go underground, we would like to go underground. And sometimes there would be a cost-sharing process. I know we have talked about some of the aerial crossings down on Argyle as well. So anytime BC Hydro is open to it, we would bring it back to council if there was a cost sharing or a chance that we could bring utilities underground to lessen the sites, but also the hazards of trees falling on it and outages.
Thank you. Councillor Solda.
Just a quick question to the CAO. So, well, Hydro, don't they have grants that you can get. I mean, they could apply for their own grants. No, I'm just putting it out there. Regarding the utilities, isn't it not better to have them underground because we're in the tsunami area and stuff like that, or does it matter at that point?
I think that's a complex question on which utilities are underground and which aren't, and how they're placed underground, and the effect that a tsunami would have on them. I don't have the answer to that, but usually underground is less disruption, but just costs more capital. Again, in the short term, I know that BC Hydro and some new developments have been putting it underground right off the bat, where the shallow utilities can be put underground. Again, I would bring it up with BC Hydro anytime when we're moving forward with a project to see if that is a possibility.
Thank you. So a quick question. So all these letters and concerns that we are getting about the future development or redevelopment of that area, as well as the Beaver Creek and River Road, do we forward them on to the Ministry of Highways for their knowledge? Or are we waiting for when they do a public consultation?
Okay, thanks for the question there. I'm going to try and recap it. So any questions we get about highways or about their projects, we pass on all the comments in general, not the actual emails or letters. But utilities have talked with highways about in several locations that highways intersects with the city. So again, that'll be an ongoing conversation, but yes, the general comments are brought forward, and the pedestrian safety, the traffic safety, planters, bus stops, we discuss all those things and how it affects highways and the intersection with city operations.
So thank goodness you mentioned planters, because I've been hearing a lot about the planters and the trees on Johnson Road, and you probably have heard too. So when they are blooming, there's a lot of accessibility on the crosswalks. People are having a hard time seeing. I actually was driving, and it took one person at least 20 minutes to cross the road because he couldn't walk. And he's waving the cars. Some cars went by him after he crossed their path, and he kept waving for me to go on, but I stopped because he was near the end. So I'm just worried about some of those plants that we do plant. They're beautiful, but they really bloom in the summer, and their accessibility, and I've been hearing that from the merchants too. Just wanted to put it out there.
Don't
before
take
we start
away our
planting.
plants.
No, I'm not saying to take away the
Build
plants.
bump outs so that people can be seen.
What I'm referring to is to move them further away from the crosswalks or something like that. I don't know. It needs to be taken a look at. There is concerns. I'm just putting it out there.
On that specific one, we did move the planter several stalls down.
Thank you. Councillor Patola.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. The only query I have is what would be the effect on 2 words: Christmas decorations.
Through the chairs, that's a great conversation to bring up at this time, but really, it would be looking at how to fasten them and where you fasten them. We could use buildings, and we just have to make sure that we meet other levels of government's policies and height restrictions over top of their assets. So again, moving forward, we're going to be working with Modi very early to make sure that the type of decorations that we put up do not affect the height restrictions, and also look at if we are stringing new lines on where we put them.
Thank you. Any other comments on correspondence? Councillor Patola.
If we're finished with Mr. Kangeser's letter, Madam Mayor, I did have some comments on the letter from the City of Duncan. And as I understand their reasoning, it seems quite correct, and that would certainly be a resolution I would support, because it failed to appear charges seem to be skewing the cost to the city, as I'm sure they would here, and the fact that there is a regional courthouse in Port Alberni, and that would affect our policing statistics as well. I wonder what the appropriate manner to amend their suggested resolution would be, whether it would be through correspondence prior to the AVICC resolution or at the resolution, but it seems to me the same reasoning would apply to charges for breach of probation and breach of bail when individuals fail to report to bail supervisors and probation officers. It's essentially the same charge. They come in under separate sections, but it's their probation-initiated charges, just as the fail to appear charges are court-initiated charges or Crown-initiated charges. So neither of those categories would require police activity per se, and thus perhaps should be included as well, because we'd like to get those numbers as realistic as possible so that we don't overspend.
Thank you. I think we would have some options. Obviously, we could bring that forward as an amendment on the floor, but it might be worth writing a letter and suggesting the amendment, writing a letter to offer support for the resolution that's going forward and suggesting the amendment within so that they have a heads up. It could be in writing and we'll make it easier to have the amendment recognized on the floor. Okay. Would you like to make a motion that we write that letter?
Okay, yes, details to be worked on. So thank you, Madam Mayor. I would make a motion that we write to the City of Duncan proposing a amendment to their proposed resolution regarding fail to appear charges, that their resolution also includes statistics with regards to probation-initiated charges for fail to report to probation supervisors or bail supervisors.
Thank you. I'll second that. Any comments? Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. And thanks for recognizing that, Councillor Patola. I think that's an excellent point. Any other comments on the correspondence? Seeing none, would somebody like to move receipt? Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Patola. On the motion, all in favor? Any opposed? Carried, none opposed. No report from in camera, so we'll move on to council reports. Any items councillors would like to speak to or highlight? Councillor Solda.
It's not a report, actually, Madam Mayor. I just want to say kudos to the staff regarding the reflective markers on the crosswalks. And that actually, I was driving by at night and I'm going, oh my God, did I miss this? You know, or do I not come out at night? So they're amazing. And too bad Johnson Road couldn't, as I was driving through Johnson Road and I'm going, oh, I wish it was here too, at these crosswalks and painted crosswalks. So I just think it's great and it's a great start. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm just going to piggyback onto that. If you think those are great, wait till the pedestrian control crosswalk lights come in. And in saying that, if we do take the lights away from Johnson Road or the overhead, we could just put a big Santa's on top of each one. And so every time someone presses the button, Santa lights up. So anyways, but but kudos to staff, unbelievable work. It's such a small and effective piece and it's done so much already. And I've had a lot of people in the community talk about it. So kudos to staff. Thank you so much. And we look forward to the rest of the work.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. Any other items for councillor reports? Okay, motion to receive from Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Solda. On the motion to receive, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. We'll move on to new business. Item number 1, seniors advocacy and notice of motion from March 11th. Then I'll go to Councillor Solda to read the actual motion.
Madam Mayor, I move that council direct staff to send a resolution to the Union of BC Municipalities, UBCM, and also send it as a late resolution to the Association of Vancouver Island and Coastal Communities, and a copy to the MLA Josie Osborne requesting provincial support of the recommendations outlined in the Office of the Seniors Advocate report titled Resourceful and Resilient Challenges Facing BC's Rural Seniors, dated February 2024, and further to request the creation of a Rural Seniors Caucus within the UBCM membership.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Solda, seconded by Councillor Mealy. Any comments? Seeing none, on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you for that. Item number 2, Canada Day Family Event, recommendations from the March 18th Committee of the Whole meeting. I will read this motion, which is that council direct staff to coordinate a 2024 Canada Day family event in conjunction with local groups, organizations, and staff seek any available grants. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Solda. Any comments on this? Seeing none on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you for that. And on to item number 4, which I believe was from Councillor Solda. Budget presentations and recommendations from the March 18th Committee of the Whole meeting.
So, Madam Mayor, I'll move that in 2025, Council directs city staff to request managers make department presentations during tax time.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Mealy, and I'll go to Councillor Patola next, but I just wanted to comment on this briefly that I see this as department presentations prior to or at the start of tax time, of budget time. I think that once we get into budget, our practice of having the CAO and Director of Finance answer questions and move the process along makes a lot of sense still, and it works. We go to a director if needed for further information, but I wouldn't see this as going back to what we used to do, which was every director sitting in every budget meeting and answering questions directly. So that's how I'm understanding the motion, and I just wanted kind of clarity from Councillor Solda.
So, Madam Mayor, I feel there's a lot of people in the community that do not know what each individual department does in our city. And if we have questions like, so you need 10 new vehicles, tell me why, or present it to us. And it doesn't have to have every manager sitting in the galley to explain it, one person. Our manager, our director, your job is all the figures in that. Do you know how every vehicle runs and everything like that? I would like to hear it from the department and or from the tech department or something. I'm sorry, it's not an insult. Yours, hey, a car runs if it runs to me. But anyways, so it's, yeah.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Patola and then Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I again, have the same understanding that you had, Madam Mayor, with regards to the intention and the timing and the agenda from when those presentations would occur. And it's based on that understanding that I wish to assist my friend, Councillor Solda, in making an amendment to her motion, and that the motion reads the same up until make department presentations. After that, I would amend it by saying prior to commencing council's financial planning process.
Thank you. So that amendment is moved by Councillor Patola and seconded by Councillor Solda, and thanks. I think that's a great amendment. I think of it somewhat as our annual report comes out every year with a really great overview of each department, a lot of details on what they do throughout the year, and we could have a similar type presentation at the start of budget time or prior to. So that's great. Any comments on that amendment? Councillor Haggard, is your hand up to comment on the amendment or to comment otherwise?
I have a question on the original motion, so I can wait and ask my question after the amendment is moved and seconded.
Wonderful. So it's been moved and seconded, and I'll come back to you after we vote on the amendment. So seeing no other comments on the amendment, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you. And I'll go to Councillor Haggard now for comment.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. At the beginning of last term, I seem to remember all the department heads, they did come in and make a presentation. Do you remember the rationale why they stopped doing that?
I don't. I know we've done it differently so many years. I know a few years ago we got rid of department presentations altogether, then we went back to them, and it just kind of ebbs and flows. I think sometimes it's to streamline process, and we've done it department presentations midway through budget as well a couple of years. CAO, did you want to add?
Yeah, through the chair, I believe whenever a new council starts, usually there is an orientation of the full operation of the city, and that might be what was done in the prior year. Moving forward, I can give council some assurance we're going to be talking about service levels throughout the year. So that means departments will be bringing forward what they're doing and talking about the service levels, because that usually has an effect on the operating budget. So as we get into the operating budget discussion, it gives council more context throughout the year of what we're actually doing and what the service we're providing for the value of the taxpayer's dollar.
Thank you. Councillor Haggard, does that satisfy your question?
Well, it wasn't really an answer, but I was just asking if you remembered why they stopped, because it was a good orientation. But I don't think it was just because it was a new council. I think it was just something that was done, and then all of a sudden it wasn't done. So I couldn't remember why. Thank you.
Thank you, that's great. And yeah, from my memory, it just has happened differently a number of years. So could be to do with what council wants at the time or just when we get to budget in the year as well sometimes. Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I will support this motion. I totally believe, and a little bit from a different point of view, I think it's a customer service thing really for us. We have this all streaming online and it's a great, and I think back to 20 odd years ago when we would have the inspector would come for the RCMP and the fire chief would come the same night and by law enforcement, and they would talk about what their expectations are for the year, what they're looking at in a budget, and we can get that kind of preliminary. But now it's all on YouTube, so the community can go back and go, okay, and even just put a face to the name a lot of times in our community. Have one night where it was, planning, bylaw, and corporate services or whatever. Or City Works Yard would come and talk about what they were going to do this year and what vehicles they needed. And then they would, without having to put it on one person, they would talk about, the flail mower. I remember that years ago, the flail mower. Okay, what's a flail mower? Okay, well, we need one, but it's, okay, let's go through it. What exactly is this huge piece of, the super sucker? That was another one too. We talked about a super sucker before we even bought it. I remember that. So I do see an advantage of having the staff heads, the management heads coming and, or department heads, sorry, coming and talking about it and just putting a face to the name and to the position within the community and showing the taxpayers, these are the people that are in charge of what's going on.
Absolutely, thank you. Any other comments on this? Okay, seeing none, on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed, and I should have said motion as amended, but I think everyone was comfortable with that amendment. Okay, item number 4, 3-stream waste collection service contract renewal. I'll go to our Director of Finance.
Madam Mayor, so staff are seeking the renewal of the agreement that we have with the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District for consolidation and transport of the recycled materials from the Alberni Valley landfill to Parksville. So given the nature that of our trucks and how we operate, this is an important consolidation partnership that we have with the ACRD. We also work with them on education and support throughout the year, and this is just seeking a renewal and a confirmation for a 3-year term of this agreement moving forward.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments on this? Okay, Councillor Mealy.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Move that council authorize the mayor and corporate officer to renew the 3-stream waste collection service agreement with the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District for the handling and shipping of recyclable materials related to the city's curbside collecting of recyclable materials within the city until December 31st, 2026.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Solda. Not seeing any comments on the motion. All in favor? Opposed? Carried, none opposed. And on to appointment of corporate officer. CAO, do you want to speak to this?
Thank you, and through the chair, we have a change happening in corporate services. Our fantastic Mrs. Monteith is moving on to be to another organization as she was in a term position. We'll miss her greatly and thank her for everything she's done for the city of Port Alberni and for council and the community. So we will miss her greatly, but stepping up into her position in the interim until the maternity leave is complete will be our deputy director, Ms. Starling, and we have all the confidence that she'll continue on the good work.
Thank you. Donna, I just wanted to thank you for the work that you've done here at the city, and it was unfortunate that you're in a term position. We have really enjoyed having you on board and wish you well in your new position. Councillor Mealy, would you like to read this motion?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I move the council appoint Sarah Darling, Deputy Director of Corporate Services, as Corporate Officer and assign the responsibility of corporate administration for the City of Port Alberni to Ms. Darling in accordance with Section 148 of the Community Charter effective April 5th, 2024.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Mealy, seconded by Councillor Solda, and so glad that we have Sarah at the back ready to step up for that. So thank you, Sarah. Any comments from council? Seeing none on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you. Okay, and on to our item, lead item of new business, item number 6. I will go to Councillor Douglas.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. 2 items. One is just at this time of year, and I had a query to the CAO, just because I don't remember the exact details, related to outdoor burning. And as that relates to our concern about wildfires and our concern about the air quality. So the question was the date in which citizens of our city have to cease doing outdoor burning.
CAO.
Through the chair, I believe our fire department will set those times and put it out through many various methods of social media. But there are certain types of burning that aren't allowed at any time of year within the city boundaries. And I would, if anybody is burning or has questions about that, they should contact the fire departments, where for certain types of burning, there are fines that come along with that. So again, we do have compost bins for different types of compostable refuge. We don't suggest burning close to your house or anything like that. There are certain setbacks. So again, I would reach out to the fire department to make clear. And as the drier season comes into effect, once campfires or the such for cooking food are banned, the fire department will be putting that on social media and educating the public.
Thank you. And I think just for additional information, backyard burning of all kinds, with the exception of campfires, is banned in the city of Port Alberni. So for any specific types of burning where you do have a question, the fire department is who to reach out to. But campfires are permitted, and there's some good recommendations on our website about what a campfire is and what it is not, or information on our website. And of course, I think the confusion comes from members of the public because the regulations in the regional district are very different. So where in the city of Port Alberni you are not permitted to burn, in our same airshed in other parts of the valley you are. So a bit unfortunate that we do have varying regulations, but definitely make sure you know where you live and then you check with the local authority. CAO.
I also forgot that it is on our website, all the rules and regulations. The fire department does go visit, so if a resident is unsure if it's a fire of the right size or that fits within our bylaw, our fire department does drop by lots of houses, either by complaint or visual, to remind people to be compliant with our bylaws.
Absolutely. Thank you. Okay. Councillor Douglas.
Thank you. Yeah, and I do have one more issue after that, but just to follow up, it seems to my recollection we did have specific dates, and I'm very thankful to recognize that we changed that now and we have restricted burning throughout the year. So I'm gathering that that's the correct assessment now. As I was walking around the community yesterday, and there was outdoor burning occurring in a yard. And the other thing I wanted to reflect on this through our representatives on the ACRD is, I wanted to bring this more to, as I'm sure we all do, a heightened awareness due to wildfires, and particularly in the ACRD, and perhaps they should be considering some further restrictions, as of course we will be affected if a wildfire is initiated in the regional district area. So I really just wanted to bring this up as bring it a higher profile so that we can emphasize our concern about that. The second issue I wanted to follow up with was to do with trails, and again to our CAO, I've just become aware of a volunteer organization. Well, I've known of it for many years, but their interest in perhaps helping out as a volunteer component of our new trail system as far as making signs. And I was by our makerspace the other day, and they have the capacity of making wood signs, and quite a few of them are being made by young people that are attending there. I'm just wondering if there's an option for us to reach out to the Alberni Valley Outdoor Club and to Makerspace to see if it's possible they could play a role in marking some of the new trails that we're establishing in Roger Creek, and we were discussing Dry Creek at our last council meeting. A member of public brought that up, and if we do some improvements there. So I just wanted to really bring that up as an option to see if we can bring a volunteer component into helping manage our trails within the city. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Councillor Douglas, CAO.
Thanks for the question. I understand that the club has been in touch with our parks manager, but also the ACRD and the city partnered before I was with the city and created a wayfinding signage theme. Again, that's out with consultation with First Nations before we move forward with putting it up, and also making sure that the names of the trails are representative. So again, once that's complete, that will come forward to council. And once we go to increase our wayfinding with the ACRD, we will have to put out a procurement for those type signs. And at that time, we can also talk to the society, because I understand the society's also been in touch with the ACRD, and local governments love to work with community groups on these types of initiatives. So thank you for reminding me, and staff, we will follow up on your recommendations.
Thank you. And I just wanted to note around your request for us to bring the backyard burning conversation to the ACRD that it has been a big topic of conversation at the ACRD for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years. Backyard burning, I would say it is a very sensitive subject where people in the rural areas very much want to protect their right to burn, and certainly have expressed very strongly they do not want the city interjecting in those conversations. That said, we are all part of one airshed, and the Alberni Valley Air Quality Council has kind of furthered those conversations as well. So the regional district has been doing some updates to their official community plan and bylaws, and there has been lots of conversation around burning in those discussions. And we've several times reiterated our preference that, and you know, again, the knowledge that I think it was probably 9 years ago that the city took the step to ban backyard burning as a result of recommendations from the Air Quality Council. And the reports that were coming forward on the damaging effects of backyard burning certain times of year to our airshed. So we have reiterated that several times, but we're not a part of the planning function at the regional district, so we don't actually have a formal vote on those bylaws. But thanks for bringing it forward, and we will continue to bring that forward and also to support the Air Quality Council in the work that they're doing. Okay, moving on to question period. This is an opportunity for members of the public to ask questions of council on decisions or recommendations made during the course of the meeting. A maximum of 3 questions per speaker. And for those participating electronically, if there is anyone, I don't see anyone other than councillors. If there is anyone there, please use the raise your hand feature. Would any members of the public like to ask questions today? Come on forward. Yeah.
Hello, my name's Gail, and I would like to thank Cindy Solda and Todd Patello for bringing forward the motion to support the creation of a rural ministry that was brought forward with Isabel McKenzie. My one question is, I don't know whether it would be a highways issue or a city roads issue. Johnson Street, where there have been many pedestrian mishaps, and I did notice the yellow signs and the yellow strips and the white strips on the stop signs. That's a good start. I don't know if anybody's driven in Duncan in the night, but they have many lights that are pedestrian operated by solar panels. Nanaimo's getting them as well. But my question is about Johnson Street and Elizabeth Street. Although I don't live in the city, I drive and walk in the city. And going through on Johnson, turning right onto Elizabeth, there's parking right up to the sidewalk. I think that parking space should be removed there and maybe other places, because sometimes there's great big trucks there. You don't see people on the sidewalk. You don't see them till they're past that vehicle. And it's, to me, it's, I don't know, maybe somebody could take it somewhere where they can deal with that. And there's
Yeah.
probably other areas in the city that could be done as well.
Yeah, thank
to
you.
make things a bit more safe for people walking.
I think that's a great suggestion and appreciate you bringing forward a specific example. We will pass that along to the ministry. We are in regular contact with them, and Lower Johnston Road pedestrian safety improvements have been an area of focus for us in recent meetings. So we will certainly pass along that specific suggestion. We can also bring it to our next traffic advisory committee meeting. That is a provincial road, but the traffic advisory committee does have provincial representatives on it. So we can bring it to both places, to our specific meetings and then to the committee meetings to make sure that it gets attention.
Okay.
And we are undergoing assessments of Lower Johnson Road with the ministry, updating some of the study work that was done a few years ago, looking at how we can add pedestrian safety. And I would just say lastly that we also did approve, or are going to approve, theory in this budget, some additional pedestrian crossing lights for a number of local crossways outside of Johnston Road, because of course that is ministry, but for city streets in Port Alberni where we identified kind of the highest area of risk. So you will be seeing more pedestrian activated lights.
Okay, thank you. Because bump outs cost a lot of money to do. And if you removed a parking space and put a barricade on an angle, that would probably be quicker and cheaper to do, I think, but I don't really know.
Thank you. I think there's short term and long term, and we can definitely look at both. Mr. Anderson.
Three questions today. One about the committee of the whole is why are so many of the issues that's discussed at the council meeting referred to a committee of the whole? I have other feelings on it, understanding the different versions of a committee of the whole that I understand is a case in a lot of places. But why is so many of the issues, the discussion is halted and referred to committee of the whole?
In order to have additional discussion, get additional information, and allow more time for dialogue in the community to go on before we make a decision.
And some of those, I'm not saying all of them by any means, but some of those can't be discussed at a council meeting and dealt with in a more urgent manner as discussed today.
Yeah, absolutely. We are never required to bring something to a committee of the whole, but the intent of putting in committees of the whole was to allow for, not just a report coming to council and then make a decision and then we hear from the public afterward, but to allow that space between, something coming forward, dialogue happening in the community at meetings and outside of meetings, and then coming to a committee of the whole and then coming back to a council meeting. It does slow things down, but I think the intent was that slowing things down is not always a bad thing if it allows for more engagement.
Yeah. And it was also part of the initial plan was to provide public input at a committee of the whole, which doesn't work. Anyway, you've answered my question. I appreciate that. I'll deal with my third one first. Traffic congestion in Port Alberni. I believe in 5 years, because it's a problem now, we're going to have a huge problem. And I wonder, number one, are we addressing that financially, prepared to do a second crossing, which should, in my opinion, considering the high school and the current popular access to the other side of town, are we considering that as far as being prepared to deal with this issue, what is going to be a big problem, I would say, within the next 5 years?
We have no current conversations ongoing about a second crossing. That said, we have old information, a whole bunch of it, that could be pulled out and reactivated for a conversation at any point in time. We're also doing our official community plan as well as our master plans, and so the second crossing could be looked at as part of those plans.
Good, thank you. And my last one is on the new business, the Seniors Advocacy Committee. It's very vague. And I guess what I would appreciate is that how council, or maybe through you, Cindy, through yourself, how did they see the creation of a rural seniors caucus within them? How do you see that dealing with our issues that's been brought up by members of this community about reinstating the seniors committee? Could you just expound on that a little to give me more information as to how you see that working? I'm not saying it wouldn't work, I'm just would like the information.
So Councillor Petula and I met with some local seniors, the Seniors Council that you're referring to. We've asked for more information, and we haven't had a chance to talk and bring it forward to council. So what's different in the rural and urban is so different. And I'm talking about accessibility. Like as an example, on the internet, I just read about someone who needs a surgery, and she's from a rural community and has to be in Vancouver for the next 6 months, but she's refused the surgery because she can't afford to live in Vancouver. So she is from a rural community. So actually somebody in the Okanagan is helping her out to be able to have this surgery. So she needs, I believe, a lung transplant. So there's a lot of seniors, and there's a lot of that need help, but cannot have transportation to get to the hospital in Vancouver or wherever. So there's a lot of effects. So we will talk more and then bring it back to council, and we'll have more of an explanation. We've asked for terms of reference, which we just received about a couple of days ago. And we're not going to bring it to council till we are comfortable to bring it to council and have all our ducks in order. There's a lot. We've heard about one voice, a voice of many speaking through one voice can have more of an impact on the community and bringing it to government level too. So I think that's really important. I don't know if you want to address that too, because you were we were on a Zoom conference call, Madam Mayor, and so I don't know if. For sure. Councillor Petula.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would, specifically with regards to the rural caucus, that's a recommendation from the seniors advocate, outgoing seniors advocate, I should say. In our meeting that Councillor Solder and I had with some representatives from the seniors community, that was the basis of the conversation, and those being current, somewhat official, certainly well contemplated recommendations. That is a step forward. And as Councillor Solder pointed out, that there is a difference between the rural seniors' concerns and the urban seniors' concerns, or certainly with their representation. So Mr. Erskine was also on the call. He's president of a retirees fund, Retirees Association, and has a provincial point of view across this, and certainly supported the necessity to support rural seniors. That's not to say urban seniors don't also have concerns, different concerns, although seniors' concerns cover off across all areas, span all areas of the city's influence and the provincial influence. So the benefit is that as Miss, Gail, I don't remember your last name, but pointed out, she is more of a rural individual, although participates within the city limits. And therefore, our discussion felt that this is a place to start. And that's how it will help, not only as a place to start, but also as many of the concerns that seem to be preeminent are directed towards the rural areas.
Who were the seniors, I don't need the names specifically, but who were the seniors you consulted with besides Mr. Eckstein, whose views are more provincial than Port Alberni?
Well, like you just said, you don't need the names, so you're not going to get
don't.
the names. That was a private meeting of private individuals. I'm simply reporting on what's come out of that and the recommendation we've put forward to UBCM.
So that's not a fair response, because I've been an advocate for this issue, talked about it for about a year, and never got anywhere with city council. You never said no. I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but as far as reinstating the committee, it was always a reason why it's going to go on further. There was one member from council, and I'm sure there was other engagements that you had that attended the meeting with the seniors advocate. And what Councillor Solder is saying, that I'm aware of all that because I was at the meeting. And so it's a fair question to ask, who did you meet to get input from seniors? I certainly have been outspoken. I wasn't consulted. In fact, I put an invitation out to council to join me for coffee. I didn't have one reply till I brought it up again, and Councillor Mealy did mention, and I still haven't met, but a lot of stuff has happened since then, and I would still like to accept that. And no,
Mr. Anderson, do you have another question? Because what I heard the question was, who did you meet with, but you don't need to provide names? And the answer was, we're not going to provide names, but met with a group of seniors. So
well,
is there
I'm
a
not
follow-up
surprised
question
at
to
that
that?
either, because that's a legitimate question, is what I'm saying, is who you're meeting. I want to ensure that you're meeting with people who are supportive of seniors. There's groups in this town, the MPRE are by that means, and they've been an advocate as well, and I support them. And so this is why that question came about. And I still never got an answer as to what this Rural Seniors Caucus is going to do, that reinstating, for example, a seniors committee, reinstating that committee couldn't also be helpful in doing, where volunteers who have issues with seniors would work on behalf of the city with a city council member present to engage in some of these issues, which was an excellent presentation by the seniors advocate.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson. I'm going to go to Councillor Solda for a comment.
Yeah, sure.
So my comment is, I've sat on a lot of senior home committees, like the Rainbow Gardens for Park Echo and all that. So I have, for many years, have been an advocate for seniors. So I just want to leave it like that first. And the motion was to take it to the UBCM. The UBCM will do the terms of reference. I would like to have a rural committee set up by the UBCM with the terms of references, and people from across the island, seniors, representing the seniors of the rural areas, if not through the whole of BC. So that is where it's at. We'll see what comes out of it, because what my recommendation is the recommendation from the Seniors Advocacy Office. Her recommendations, which you were at, and some people in this room were sitting at and listening to, and I so agree with that. There's a lot of seniors that need help but cannot get help, and we wanted to make it broader and have the province be involved. So that is all I can tell you right now until we hear from the UBCM if they accept it or not, and the AVICC.
Thank you.
Thank
you, Councillor
my last
Solda.
brief comment
Mr. Anderson, do you have an additional question?
Well, I should have an opportunity to respond to someone who is responding to my.
I think we've had about 4 or 5 back and forth so far, and it is not public input period, it is question period. So I'd love to ask if you have an additional question, and we'll be happy to answer it.
Well, there is no public input period. Again, is it going to the UBC? I know you're going to turn this off. Is just another delay in answering the question. Is it worthwhile having a seniors committee reinstated? And we never hear from council on this issue. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other questions from members of the public? Mr. Smith.
Hello, Council. Just circling back quickly on the railroad discussion earlier. I would imagine that the two crossings, if you proceed to doing them this year, there are railway crossing regulations that need to be met. I would imagine the signalization is probably not required for these two crossings. It would be static signs or some such infrastructure, but is that included in this, I guess in the line materials? Would that be where that's captured? Though?
Thank you for the question, CAO.
Yeah, thanks for the question. Yeah, any traffic crossings, our understanding is it does not apply, but until I get it actually into the RFP and the actual standard, we'll have to provide for that. We will have to meet a roadway design standard, and I have yet to, part of the agreement process is actually marking out the travel portion of the train, so I can verify all crossings. If they go across Argyle, it might be different than going across Dunbar or Athol. So there are different standards for depending on the type of crossing you're making and the amount of traffic that's in that area and the type of control of those intersections. So there is a little more work we have to do on it, and I'm in discussions with IHS, and then I'll also involve our traffic engineers.
So that is captured in this 143. Correct. It should be there. Okay. And the other question is, with respect to the railway, the city owns a portion, I believe it's from the gate near Catalyst. Although on BC assessment, I noticed that there seems to be a sliver of a land that bisects a railroad track that says it belongs to Catalyst. So the north side would be Island Corridor. Is there a little sliver that is still actually Catalyst? And then south of that is now the city of Port Alberni with respect to last year's purchase of the SOMAS lands? Could you explain how all that legalese works?
Correct. There is multiple ownerships on the full rail. The city's rail land is in front of the SOMAS that comes down. At the Catalyst gates, there is a section of land that Catalyst owns. And we work with them on some of that land. But it is a little more complicated, the ownership right around Catalyst and the intersection there. This proposal does not go down to that point.
Correct, yeah, I understand that. And with respect to the Y then, is the Y also Catalyst, or does the city have full control of that?
So through the chair.
With respect to the, the print truck out there.
The Y area is the area that Catalyst owns right out.
Okay.
There is a section that goes over to, I'm going to mess up on the names of everything, but there is a section that the city has a right-of-way on as well that covers part of the tracks. And then we also own tracks, but then Catalyst has some rights to those as well. So in that little area just before the Y, going to the road, it's a little more complicated in that section.
Okay, and Madam Mayor, if you humble me for one last question, I'm up to three. With respect to the entire rail line, I know the city owns, Island Corridor's position, strong position, is that this is an active rail line. Notwithstanding that the Victoria subdivision is severed in several places, their position is that this is an active railway. Does that narrative also apply to the city-owned portion of the rail bed, that under the permit that's issued to the IHS or any rail operator, that rail line, until it's otherwise declared by the province to be an inactive railway, is the city's portion, along with the Island Corridor, does both sides need to meet the same standards with respect to regulations, with respect to any work that happens adjacent to or over the rail lines?
I would just say that the city has not made any specific declaration that it is or is not an active rail line. So to date, there has not been a declaration similar to the one made by Island Corridor.
So the province does not view it as an active rail line?
Through the chair. So if we do run rail, we will be working with Technical Safety BC, which governs the rail and what we must do to run rail on it. So we will meet all standards for rail if rail is running on a track.
Sure, and I would expect that. No, the clarification was, is it considered by the province, Island Corridor, all the rest of the island is Island Corridor, whether the piece the city of Port Alberni owns is subject to the same current terms and conditions as Island Corridor?
I don't know the specific terms and conditions that Island Corridor runs under, but we do have to meet the rail lines from BC. The rules and regulations, if we run rail on there.
Yeah, it would be the same then, yeah.
I'm not sure if there's extra or limited, where I know that the Rail Act goes back quite far. So if you're dealing with CN or CP, they sometimes have different rules than other railways. So I haven't looked in depth. I'm in conversations with Island Corridor all the time, but I don't understand what the difference is between the operating. But we do have to, for traffic signals, for the running, the maintenance, all of that goes through technical BC.
All right, thank you for your time.
Thank you. Charlene.
Hi, Mayor, councillors. Okay, well, I've already spoken to you about climate change and how CO2 is so important for the survival of humanity. Levels have grown slightly in the past few years, but are still below an appropriate level for good plant growth and human health. Climate change is a UN global agenda that has been in the works for decades to scare the population. Remember, it was once global warming, now it's climate change. There's a new documentary movie called Climate the Movie, with scientists speaking out about the cold truth about CO2 and how important it is for the survival of humanity. I've printed out information regarding the movie and a link to this great documentary. My question is, will any of council be brave enough to watch this documentary? It's 80 minutes.
I'm sure several of us would be happy to watch the documentary.
Can I give this to you? Okay, another question. During the COVID pandemic, when council allowed businesses of Port Alberni to refuse entry to taxpayers that did not have a vaccine passport, it is rumored that City Council hired a security team to oversee that the restaurants and city venues actually illegally ask for the passport. Is this true?
No, that is not true. So the city actually had no role in allowing or not allowing the vaccine passport to happen within the city of Port Alberni. We didn't have a decision on it. We didn't have discussion on it. It was a provincial mandate that the city didn't have authority to interject ourselves into, and we certainly did not hire a security company to ensure that it was enforced or not enforced.
Okay, well, that's what I was, thank you. On your financial budget, the third reading, I'm kind of new at this, as you've noticed. Does this mean that it is, it's final?
No, so there's 4 readings that will be given to the budget. So this is the third. So there will be one more coming forward, and then separate from that, the tax rate bylaw will come forward.
When is the deadline for the financial budget?
May 15th.
May 15th. Oh, good, because there's still another cow meeting that is available. Okay, so on your financial budget, the AV multiplex is at $647,000. Does that include the $500,000 for the skateboards?
No, I don't believe so. Mike, are you able to speak to that? To the skate park? I don't think we have a budget for the skate park specifically currently.
Well,
if that's what you're
I may
asking.
be getting the AV multiplex confused with the Bulldog skating rink. Aren't they the same?
Okay, Charlene, is what you're asking about the rink boards?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So the rink boards are not included in the 2024 financial plan. They are a proposed cost for 2025 that council has not discussed yet.
Oh, okay, you've moved it up, eh? Good, good. Okay, can I put another question in? Okay. The bylaw enforcement budget is at $474,853. And a number of years ago, there was only one bylaw officer for Port Alberni. And the population hasn't changed that much. My question is how many bylaw officers do you have presently?
We have 2 bylaw officers, one manager, different title now, not manager of bylaw. Used to be manager of bylaw, but I believe now it's public safety services.
Safety and social services.
Thank you. And we have, I believe, one full-time administrative support as well. Mike?
Correct, and then also the manager of community policing.
Thank you. So I would say
So-
the department has changed quite a bit in their role since it was just one specific bylaw officer. It was, that was a very reactive response to bylaw. Now we've broadened it out to be more focused on public safety generally. So a lot of the activities within that department are not specifically enforcing bylaws. The manager of public safety and the social services aspect as well are outside of that.
Okay, so it's almost $500,000, $500,000. Yeah, I guess with vehicles, how many bylaw vehicles are there? Two?
2 bylaw vehicles.
Okay, all right. Hey, thanks very much.
Thanks,
Thanks
Charlene.
for, oh, by the way, I really approve of the railroad thing going in Port Alberni. When I first moved here, it was one of the most exciting parts of Port Alberni, and we do need tourism, right? So I approve of it.
Thank you for that. Are there other
right.
members of the, thank you, Charlene. Are there other members of the public who would like to ask questions today? Joseph?
Hi, my name's Joseph. I live here in Port Alberni. Just a quick question. I could just contact somebody in planning probably and ask this question. But with the multifamily that's being, I take it that's probably market housing that's going in on Kingsway. But even if it's rental, are they looking at implementing charging within the, especially that one with underground parking and the swing towards electric vehicles or electric hybrid? Are they actually, is that something that's going to be looked at in being included in a build like that, is having a charging spot within the facility to look after that? Because that is kind of the direction, I think.
Thank you. I'll go to our Director of Development Services.
So to the best of our information, this will be a market strata building. The building code currently doesn't require EV charging stations in multifamily development, although we are seeing more and more private developers install them because it helps in their sales and when they're looking at that, because purchasers are looking for those kinds of things. I won't be surprised to see that the province, in a future update to the building code, does start to make that an actual requirement. But we are seeing that market projects are doing that because it makes sense for them to market their product.
Thank you for that, and thanks, Scott, for the information. Are there any additional questions from members of the public? Okay, with that, we're not adjourning today as we do have our in-camera following this meeting rather than at the start of it, so our process is slightly different. Councillor Mealy, would you like to make the motion to go in camera?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Move that council close the meeting to the public as per the community charter, sections 91C and 91E.
Our seconder, seconded by Councillor Patola. Seeing no comments on the motion, all in favor? Carried, none opposed. Thank you.